Hello, everyone, and welcome to your virtual reunion. We are pleased to have Bryn Pane'e Burkhart joining us from the MIT Sloan Career Development Office. If you've had the pleasure of attending one of Bryn's sessions in the past, you know that she is a skilled facilitator and presenter, an expert career coach, and a wonderful colleague and resource for the MIT Sloan alumni community. We are so pleased to welcome her to our virtual reunion stage. So Bryn, I will go ahead and turn it over to you.
All right, thanks, Greg. Hi, everybody. Welcome to your virtual reunion. I hope this finds you all well, healthy, hopefully vaccinated, and starting to open up your lives, or looking forward to doing that soon. I will say that reunion was always my favorite time of year to be on campus. So while we can't be in person today, I am going to do my best to transmit some of that energy and ebullience that we would normally get from being in the same room with one another over Zoom for the next hour. So let's jump into the slideshow here. We have a ton of content today, and I'm really excited to share with you this updated version of my intelligent networking workshop, because I've had a lot of alums use this with great success in the last year. Now, when you think about networking, I know it's not always a palatable subject, but I'm going to do my best to have you approach networking in a smart and practical way. We're going to talk about organizing and communicating with your contacts, acquiring new contacts and getting introductions, and then conducting efficient, effective networking meetings in only 20 minutes. So by the end of the hour, you should all have an idea and an enthusiasm for networking both intelligently and confidently. So let's dive in. Let's see if I can advance this. When I speak to a live audience, and I do this workshop in person, I often start by saying, tell me how you'd complete this sentence. Networking is. And inevitably, I hear things like, networking is exhausting. Networking is draining. Networking is schmoozing. Networking is begging for a job. Not great perspectives of networking. I hear all these things and I get it. But I'm going to start with a simple truth today. How you approach networking will directly inform how you experience it. So if you think that networking is going to be exhausting, it will be exhausting. So I want you to be careful about getting stuck in perspectives that don't serve you well. The perspective you hold about something will always inform how you approach it and how you experience it. It's not true of networking, it's true of anything. So I'm going to give you an example. Last year, when our lives were upended in the pandemic, I, like many of you, started working from home, and I had 2 school-age children who were schooling from home, whatever that meant. Those of you who have kids know what I mean. And I was pretty miserable. I would wake up in the morning and think, this is terrible and impossible. And for the first 3 weeks, that's pretty much how I moved through life. I finally made a choice to consciously choose another perspective to think about what was happening. And I chose the perspective of messy but grateful, meaning it was going to be a hot mess because it really was. But I was grateful that I had the privilege of being able to work from home, that my family was healthy, and that we did not have things to worry about in terms of basic shelter, food, things like that. So in doing that, I was then able to embrace that perspective and move forward in a much more productive, successful way. So if you are finding yourself, if you're one of those people who is stuck in a perspective of networking that's not serving you well, I'm going to offer you some different, lenses to try on to see if we can start to shift your outlook. My hope is, even by putting the word intelligent in front of networking, that I'm starting to shift your idea about what it could entail. So here's some perspectives of networking to consider. Think of networking as research. Research done by having conversations where you're going to ask for information and advice. Networking is two-sided. So not only are you asking people for information and advice, you are also going to ask them if you can be of help to them as well. This really shifts the dynamic. So there's a give and a take. And instead of just asking for something, you're also offering to be of help as well. And later I'm going to give you some ideas of help you could offer, because you do want to be genuine when you ask that question. Now, I hope this, for those of you who might think about networking as schmoozing or begging for a job, this can be a really important shift, because when you're asking someone if you can help them, you're building trust. It makes it about getting to know that person over getting to know a particular job or a particular company. Now, when you network with the idea of learning information, learning it, getting advice, and offering to be of help as well, you are then going to gain allies who are going to champion you in your search or in your exploration, whatever you're doing, and can offer to keep you top of mind when they hear of things that might be coming down the pike. So networking is really about planting seeds for the future, for things that may not necessarily exist yet. So patience is the name of the game here, which is why it's important to be engaging in networking, even when you're not in a transition. And then finally, networking is about tapping the hidden job market. A Forbes study showed that 80% of executive level opportunities, so more senior level opportunities, are not even posted. They exist in an invisible job market. So having networking conversations is critical for getting to tap this area. Think about it. When a hiring manager has a job, the first thing he or she thinks is, who do I know that can do this job? And then they put out feelers to their network. So decision makers tend to look to their trusted circles first. So these are 4 different ways that you could try on networking. I hope that I've been able to kind of shift your perspective and make it be no longer about networking is exhausting. Networking is ongoing. It's relational. It's reciprocal. This will make for much easier lifelong career management. And I will say that the alums that I've worked with, dozens of alums have told me that they've been able to get the inside scoop on roles before they've even been posted. They've been passed along into that hidden job market via referral. And a couple have even had jobs created for them because they impressed the heck out of somebody. So, all right, let's dive in. Before we get to the steps, there's 6 steps in my intelligent networking roadmap. I'm going to push the pause button here first. And I want to refer you to a slide from another webinar I teach called Navigating Your Career at Any Age and Stage. It's really a foundational webinar. So if any of you are in transition or you're thinking about what your next steps might be and how you can go about thinking about it, I highly recommend you watch this webinar. All right, so here's the gist. You're going to get much farther with your intelligent networking if you ground yourself first. And this requires self-reflection. Most people skip over this part because it's hard to do, right? We're so wired to go, 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 and do. But what I'm asking you is to stop and do some thoughtful preparation first. So to quickly review the groundwork I cover in that webinar, you're going to conduct 2 audits, and each audit addresses an aspect of your career management that you can control. So if we look at this dark blue circle here, the first audit you'll do is an audit of your core competencies. These are your strengths. These are your areas of expertise, your knowledge areas. Think about also those kind of softer attributes that you bring to the table. And I have a series of questions in my navigating webinar that you can go through to help you flesh out this list. Then you're going to move to this light blue circle. This is what I call your require desire audit. So what are the things that you require, right? Non-negotiables. And what are the things that you desire that would be nice to have as you think about your next step? Now, this is not about the work. This is about things that are going to make up a satisfying kind of work-life flow, if you will. So where are you going to live? How much money do you need to make or do you want to make? What will the culture of the organization be like? Do you have any flexibility needs? What about the scope of your role? So you're thinking about all these things, you're putting some parameters around them, and then you're actually going to prioritize this list. Now, this groundwork then enables you to be purposeful because you're consciously choosing what you want to be leading with, those leading strengths you want to brand yourself moving forward, and you're thinking about the parameters and the priorities around your search. And it's then that you can look at this green circle here. This is what you cannot control. This is who's hiring, what are the opportunities in the market. But now you have a clearer lens to approach your search. You know what you bring to the table, you know the priorities in your search. So then you can think about what opportunities exist that are going to get you here to this sweet spot. And I will say that I've seen it before open up opportunities that people have not considered, maybe industries or companies that might align with those two audits. This groundwork is also the basis upon which you're going to develop your career narrative. So your pitch. You're going to have a clear, concise pitch to bring to your networking meetings. And having that is going to anchor you and build your confidence. So if you skip this process, I am going to guarantee that you're going to wind up maybe not making as much progress in your search. You might find yourself disappointed or frustrated. It's really important to take the time to do this. All right, now let's move to the fun part. So I'm going to present to you the intelligent networking roadmap that I've created, 6 steps, and let's go through them all. You're going to start with organizing your network. You're then going to communicate a tailored message, with 3 different audiences. You're going to adopt a networking mindset, use that to conduct efficient informational meetings, keep expanding your network. The more you go, the more meetings you have, and then you'll always want to stay engaged. All right, so essentially these 6 steps are the steps you would take if you were in a job search, all right? And we'll drill down on the details of each of them in the coming slides. But I want you to know these principles can apply when you're happy in your role, but you just want to be purposeful about networking or just be a better networker, as it were. Or maybe you're just kind of starting to think about your next steps. You want to explore, but you're not interested in doing an actual job search. Now, with the lens of a job search, though, I want to point out intelligent networking does not put a lot of emphasis on job boards. Job boards, there's a place for that. I think of them as market research. They tell you who's hiring, what roles are being advertised. But the bottom line is you cannot conduct a job search in a vacuum. You can only spend so much of your time hiding behind the screen, applying via job boards. So people hire people. You've got to get out there and have conversations. And live contact, right, face-to-face, is really the only way you can tap that hidden job market. So let's start with step 1, organizing your network. Let's begin there. Now, I want you to know I have a handout that I think is posted on the Alumni reunion site, or it will be sent to you along with the slide deck after this webinar. So I'm about to cover a lot of content. It's pretty dense. So rather than you try and furiously scribble notes, I just want to assure you that everything I'm about to say in the next 2 slides is covered on the handout, okay? So the key to networking is starting with who you know. And I want you to begin by curating your network. Now, the most natural place to look here is LinkedIn. It's your virtual Rolodex. It's the most powerful professional networking platform available to you. I want you to look at all your first-degree connections on LinkedIn and download them into a CSV file. The directions are on that handout. Then you're going to clean up your contacts using what I call the favor test, meaning you're going to ask yourself, would I feel comfortable asking this person the favor of introducing me to someone in their network? And would I feel comfortable if they asked me to introduce them to someone in my network? If the answer is yes, you keep them. And if the answer is no, you remove them. They're not going to see that you remove them. What we're going for here is quality over quantity, and it'll start to appear, you'll start to get why the more I talk. So you're going to remove connections that don't pass the favor test. Now, inevitably, you're going to think of, there are some people who would pass the favor test to whom I'm not connected. And so I recommend that then you add connections using these 4 buckets: your family and friends, shared work experiences, so current or former colleagues, vendors, clients, peers in the industry, your alumni network, so think about who you knew from Sloan, also think about your undergrad, and then any sort of volunteer or community connections you might have. Think about neighbors, think about the parents of your kids' friends, people that you might work out with or worship with. I have you start with these categories because your most powerful connections typically come from those 4 buckets. So you add in any missing connections, and you're going to request to connect to the person on LinkedIn with a personal note. It keeps that relational component of networking front and center. The handout I referenced will give you an example, a sample note. Now, the important thing is that everyone who remains a first degree connection pass that favor test, because in theory, intelligent networking involves reaching out to everyone who's a first degree connection at some point. Not all at once, and depending on how your conversations go, you may not end up tapping everyone, but the point is that you very well may communicate with all your first degree contacts. Now, once you've got a handle on your first degree connections, you're then going to organize them. And you're going to organize them based on your targets, what you've discovered as a result of that groundwork you did. Maybe there's an emphasis on, geography. Maybe it's on industry. Maybe it's on a functional role. That's why that groundwork piece is so essential first, so you have a direction you're moving in. Next, you need to see who your first degree connections know. Those are your second degree connections. And the goal is to figure out how, maybe there's someone you want to get in front of. Maybe there's someone who is at one of your target companies or has a cool functional role that you'd love to learn about. So to do this, you can actually look at LinkedIn and you can search on second degree connections. You'll just check that box. And then there's some more filters you can apply to winnow that down further. Location, industry, function, company, school, things like that. Now, you're going to be amazed by the amount of second degree connections you have. I have around 500-ish first degree connections. I've got 500,000 second degree connections. Okay. But my ability to get in front of those 500,000 second degree connections is only as strong as my relationship with our mutual connection. And that's why it's so important for your contacts to pass the favor test. Your ability to tap that network depends on this. Second degree connections are actually very valuable. There was a study done in the early 2000s that showed that these kind of once removed connections are actually more valuable in some cases and in a job search than your first degree connections. And that's because they come with a warm referral, but your second degree connection has no preconceived notions about what you can and can't do, your skills or ability. So, all right, guys. So now you have a handle on who you know and who they know. And then obviously the last part of organizing this is to have some sort of way to manage your contacts, to track them and stay organized. Now I'm going to show you a couple examples of contact tracker sheets alums have allowed me to use next. But the important thing is you have to have a place to manage it. Some tools that people have used, obviously beyond Google Docs and Excel, are job CRM systems like Jibber or Hunter.co. Then some people have adapted sales CRM tools like HubSpot or Airtable and adapted that for a job search. Again, those company names are on the handout, so don't stress. All right, let's summarize. You're going to clean up your network. You're going to add any missing connections. You'll organize and categorize every connection. You'll then look at your second degree connections to see who they know and who you want to request an introduction to. And then finally, you'll record it all on your tracking system. Now, here's a really simple contact tracker table an alum anonymized for me. I don't know if that's a word, anonymized, but in any case, the name is, you can't see, just he had this association and how, he knew these people, a date of contact that he could always sort, and then any notes. Super simple. This is a more complex contact tracker sheet. In this case, this alum sorted by firm. He had the name and the job title and the LinkedIn URL in his spreadsheet, as well as the email. And then I want to just point out the latter part of this spreadsheet. So he had the date that he first contacted them. Now, when you reach out and ask for a meeting or an informational chat, I recommend you follow up twice before you completely give up, because at some point you do have to walk away. So it would go like this. You send a request to connect, or not to connect, sorry, to meet, either video chat, phone call, or in person. If you don't hear back in one full week, then you forward that email and say, just wanted to see if I could get on your radar. Then you wait one whole week. Then you can do it one last time and say, thought I'd try one final time to see if we could connect. After that, you let it go. So first contact, 2 reminders. So he's got those status. Now, I don't want you to get stressed out looking at this last column of this alum. He actually contacted over 800 people. So there were quite a few people who he decided not to follow up with. All right. Now let's move on to messaging. Now, as I said, in theory, you're going to be prepared to communicate with everyone in your network. So you have to prioritize your outreach. Now you've got all these people you're going to talk to, then you've got second degree connections you want your introduction to. I would suggest that you start first by reaching out to those people that you know well, to those who you have closer ties or who might be more low-hanging fruit. And you want to have those meetings first before you progress to those first degree connections that you may not know as well, or you're not as in close contact with, or those who might be kind of heavy hitters and you want to save for later after you really get in a good groove and you're feeling good about your pitch and your ability to handle a networking meeting. In order to request these meetings, you're going to create 3 types of messages. Now, these messages are all detailed on the handout again. The first message you're going to send is a general email. This is something that typically goes to family and friends or those who don't have any connection to your targets. And the purpose of this email is to give these people an update on you, clarify, kind of where you're at, what you're looking at doing. Maybe you're doing some exploration, maybe you're doing research, or maybe you are looking for a job. So you're going to use some elements of that narrative that you created from your groundwork, and you're going to ask people to keep you in mind if they know of anyone you should talk to. So it would sound something like this. Dear so-and-so, I hope this finds you healthy and well or vaccinated, update it for COVID times. I'm taking the summer to explore new ways to leverage my product management expertise in a smaller, more nimble tech company in the Bay Area. I'm open to any ideas or learning about any contacts you have that might help me move closer to my goal. Okay. And then making sure to heed that reciprocal component, you'll close with something like, don't hesitate to ask if I can ever be of help to you, or please let me know if there's ever anything I can do for you. Okay. Now, the reason you're going to send these general update emails to those who you don't think can help you at all is because you never, ever, ever want to assume that someone you know and trust is unable to help you. Someone could yield a very vital piece of information that could change your job search. I've seen this happen. I've seen people get jobs by just letting people know what they're interested in, asking for suggestions. Okay. And also, I would say most people will not be carefully curating their LinkedIn network like you will. So you actually never know who someone knows. All right. And these are really easy emails to send, you guys, because you're not asking for meetings. You're just saying, here's what I'm just putting out there to the universe. Here's what I'm doing. If you know of anything, let me know. Right. And let me know if I can ever help you. All right, the next email you're going to send is to those first degree connections who you've deemed are in some ways related to your targets. And the purpose of this email is to actually ask them to meet with you, since you want to ask them for information and get some advice. So you'd have the same intro that I just read out, acknowledging, life is opening back up. And you'd say something like, I'm starting to explore new ways to leverage my product management expertise, blah, blah, blah. Would you be willing to do a Zoom or phone call in the next few weeks so I can learn about your experience in this industry? I'll have no more than 5 questions and shouldn't take more than 20 minutes of your time. And then, of course, to make it mutually beneficial, you offer to be of help. Okay. In addition to the third email. Okay, third and final email is one where you have found a second degree contact that you want to meet in your target industry, location, function, company, whatever. And there's not a need, though, to meet with the first degree connection first. You just want to ask for a meeting, or an introduction, rather. Now, you might, depending on the nature of your relationship with the first degree connection, you might want to just have a quick call with them first. But remember, one of the reasons I want you to use the favor test is because you should be comfortable asking your first degree connections directly for an introduction. This should not be a heavy lift. So in this case, my sample would, again, use your narrative, and then you'd say something like, I noticed you have a first degree connection on LinkedIn with Mary Brown, who's working in this industry I'm researching. Would you consider asking if she'd be willing to take a short informational meeting with me? I'll take about 20 minutes and have an efficient 5-step agenda. Thank you for your assistance as I begin to research my next professional steps. Please know I'm always happy to return the favor. All right, so those are the 3 types of emails you sent. And in addition to my handout that I referenced that'll give you some templates. I also just want to refer you to the muse.com and this article in particular that can also guide you and give you some inspiration for how to craft these notes. I think what's most important is that it be genuine and it be in your voice. So these templates should help. So these are the 3 types of emails you're going to send and you're going to create. You'll send them individually, customized by name and circumstance, depending on how you know people, and tailor them as needed. All right. I do want to have a final word on this because inevitably when we get to this point, I hear from people who are hesitant to reach out to those who they haven't been in contact with for quite a long time. And I see this a lot, particularly when I'm working with people who've taken extended career breaks. But I often just say, have these people reached out to you in the ensuing years since you've lost touch or haven't been in touch? And if they did reach out to you, would you be happy to hear from them, right? So it is okay to resurrect these old relationships. Just ask yourself, what would I want to hear if they got back in touch with me? And keep that in mind when you're crafting your note. And I would also say, if we think about lessons learned from the pandemic, one thing that I think is important is that people crave connection. During COVID, I don't know if you did this, I did this. I reached out to people that I'm not really in regular contact and started chatting with them more regularly. I now have a Zoom date every 6 weeks with some old grad school friends. So when it's done with authenticity, okay, it is okay to reconnect to people who passed the favor test. And in some ways, it can even be a game changer. You already know these people. So this is where you need to leverage the people that you already know. Okay, now we are ready to network. So let's clearly define the goals of your networking conversations and meetings. As I said earlier, you are there to learn new information and ask for advice. The point of these meetings is not for you to talk the whole time and give a detailed overview. I always say it's a conversation, not a speech. So you're there to listen. You're there to get information, advice, and feedback. Another goal, when it applies particularly to a job search, is to ask these contacts in the meeting to refer you to others who might be helpful to you or to whom you might be helpful. Remember that the more people that know you, the more your name is getting circulated, the more you're on the radar when people are asked who they might know for a particular job. Go back to that hidden job market. Your chances of getting connected to a great person and a great opportunity are only expand when you expand your network. So you really do have to ask this question, and we'll talk about it when we go through the networking meeting steps. Now, a surefire way to get, if you approach your networking strategically, if you're asking if you can be of help, you're going to get allies, right? People who will champion you in your search, who will forward your resume in LinkedIn, who will check internal listings for roles at their company, who will keep you top of mind when they hear of things, who might even pitch you for contract work or gig work, things like that. And surefire way to get the allies is to offer to be of help in return. Approaching networking as a give and take can be transformative. I've had many alums tell me it really turned around the ways that they were thinking about networking and the view they were taking of it. All right, so we got our goals. Now let's get to that third step in the roadmap, which is get into a networking mindset. So as a result of curating your network and communicating to your network, let's say you have now lined up some meetings and conversations, some with people you know and some with people you don't know. So let's talk about meeting somebody. You're going to be learning about and observing these people's skills and abilities as they relate to what they do, as well as how they act in a professional setting. Now, the same goes for you. In these networking meetings, you're going to be evaluated for your interpersonal skills and your executive style, just as much as, if probably even more than, any technical abilities you possess. So how do you want to come across in a networking meeting? You want to be strategic. You want to know why you're there and what you want to accomplish. You want to be well organized. You want to manage the meeting well. You want to stay on tab, keep a close tab on topics and on time. You want to be upbeat and positive in your tone and language. You want to be grateful for the time that was spent with you. And then, I'm sounding like a broken record here, you want to always ask for help. You need to make sure it's a reciprocal process. Now, Chances are, if you've been successful in your career thus far, which I know so many of you have, then you have already demonstrated your capacity for doing all of these things. And doing that groundwork I mentioned, and thinking clearly and intentionally about what you want to do next and what's important to you also gets you into this networking mindset. It helps make you confident. You have to approach these networking conversations from a place of strength. But I want to talk about readiness. If you think that you cannot genuinely exhibit all of these qualities that I just talked about, then you are not ready to engage in networking conversations. So being in transition is difficult. And depending on the nature of the transition and the circumstances around it, there can be grief, there can be anger, there can be sadness, there can be guilt, there can be shame. And I want to normalize for you that these are all natural and typical responses to being in a career transition. I've sat with hundreds of alums in this state. I've experienced transition myself. Every single one of you watching this webinar has been in career transition at some point. So for those of you watching who are in transition, who haven't necessarily accepted or dealt with those emotions I mentioned, I want you to know that if you go forward and engage in networking conversations, and if you're negative or if you're critical about your circumstances or your former employer, that is going to completely shut down someone's willingness to pass you along in the hidden job market, to give you a referral. Okay, so it will hurt you and not help you. So here's what I say a lot in my coaching. We don't always get to choose the circumstances of our lives. However, we can choose to create from each circumstance. Think about the idea around shifting your perspective when something doesn't work, okay? If you're stuck in negativity, you're not going to be able to move forward successfully. So I want you to maybe think about a different perspective you could take, and that would then inform your experience. You know, sometimes you just need to take a little time, lean into the emotions, process it, often with a little bit of time and distance from the situation. You'll get a better idea about what is true and what really is not true about your situation. And when you can go back to that groundwork I recommended and do it with a sense of energy and optimism behind it, when you can talk about your situation in a matter-of-fact tone, but a positive tone, then you're ready, okay? So readiness is key, and the confidence comes from that readiness. All right, so that's my pep talk and my reality check. Let's move on now to the 5-step plan for having intelligent networking meetings. And I want to just point out, I sourced this from a book called The 20-Minute Networking Meeting by Marsha Ballinger and Nathan Perez. If you want to get this book, I recommend you get the executive edition. They have a new college grad edition, but I really like their executive edition. And I like the fact that they have put it together in a concise way. Because why 20 minutes? So what's the deal with the 20-minute networking meeting? Well, one of the reasons that people hate networking is because most meetings are way too long and they're way too unfocused. So everyone feels like their time is wasted. Time is valuable. Time is precious. Everyone who meets with you is giving you the gift of their time that they could be spending doing other work or being with loved ones. So if someone's going to take an hour out of their day to meet with you, that's delaying their other responsibilities and pushing that later into the day. So let's take a look at these 5 steps of a 20-minute networking meeting. I've had dozens of alums use this successfully and tell me 20 minutes is enough time to have some opening chit chat and conversation, to give a well-prepared and thought out narrative, to have a, more or less solid discussion around background and goals where you learn information and gather advice. And then to close the conversation promptly, allowing everyone to get on with their day. The 5th step of a networking meeting happens after the meeting, which is following up on any action items and sending thank yous to all involved parties. So you can do a lot in 20 minutes. Remember, someone's giving you the gift of their time, so you want to use it wisely. And I'll say, these steps seem quite obvious, but I will tell you that most people do not adequately prepare or practice and actually conduct effective on-point meetings like this. So let's take a look at each of these 5 steps. All right, So making a good first impression. Now, you know the saying, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. Now, I'm going to assume for now, you're still going to be having these conversations virtually. If the opportunity arises for you to meet in person, that's great. But given the fact that many people are still working remotely, and frankly, virtual is just easier because so many people are set up to do it virtually now, then that is probably how you want to play it for an introductory conversation at least. So let's look at the steps that you want to take. Now, in the old days, I would say make sure and be cognizant that you know your first impression arrives as soon as you enter the building. Now, these days, when somebody sees you on that screen, you want to make sure you're in a quiet place. You want to think about your background. You can use a virtual background like I have, or just blurred background so that it's not too distracting. And most important is you want to make sure that your camera is directly in front of you. So I am looking straight on at my camera. I'm sure all of you are very familiar with people who you're looking up their nose, or either it's like your God looking down on them because their camera is way up. So make sure psychologically, this is really important to be able to come across from a place of strength and confidence. You want to be looking straight into the camera. And then the last thing to think about is lighting. I don't know if everybody's got these ring lights now, but you want to make sure you're well lit. So I have windows in front of me here. Don't have windows behind you, or else you'll appear in a shadow. Okay. All right, next, you want to show up to the meeting before it begins. So you arrive early, you want to start with a warm greeting and a thank you, have that eye contact. That's really important for setting the stage, and greet that person with just a warm greeting. It'll sound something like this. It's great to see you again, Bob. Thanks for taking the time to meet with me, right? Or nice to meet you, Bob. I really appreciate your taking the time to meet with me. All right, there's always going to be a period of, and you say thank you, of course, there's always going to be a period of small talk as you're settling in. And so I suggest, in addition to saying, how are you, and responding, that you use that time to highlight any mutual connections that you might have, if that's appropriate. So that could sound something like, our friend Lamar Smith asked me to say hello. We worked together at Wayfair and he was a great colleague. Or you could say, I noticed you used to work at Wayfair. We might have some common acquaintances there. Do you know Lamar Smith? All right. Then it's time to get down to business, okay? A few minutes of introductory chit chat is fine, but remember that you're making an impression of your professional self and how you manage meetings. So you want to manage the meeting well. This is actually where most networking meetings start to go off the rails, because the person that called the meeting begins to defer to the person that they're meeting with because they just want to seem deferential. And then that person thinks, what am I doing here? This is not my meeting. I didn't call it, and it goes off the rails. So just remember, you got to tell your contact right off the bat that you're only going to take 20 minutes of their time and ask a few questions. So this would sound like this. This should be brief, Matt. My plan is to share a quick overview of my background and ask a few questions that relate to my job search, or my research, or my career exploration, something like that. All right, this sets the tone of the meeting. It shows that you're focused, it shows you're organized, and it shows that you're not afraid to lead. So back to my point about readiness, this is why confidence is key. All right, now I will say this is a 2 to 3 minute time frame. I recognize there's a lot that needs to be crammed in there. So, if it goes on longer, that's fine. Do your best to kind of guide the meeting back, but you just need to be sensitive and flexible to whatever the situation is. All right, now you're going to take 1 minute to briefly state your experience and provide a concise overview of who you are, share your industry and functional expertise, and how it relates to your target and goals. A 1 minute overview is strategic and it's efficient. Remember that you're networking, you're not interviewing, so you're not giving, again, it's not a speech, all right? You can't drone on and on, or you're going to lose people. So to put together your narrative, I suggest you pull from that background work that I have you do in the Navigating webinar. And a career narrative typically answers these 3 questions. Who am I professionally? So open up with an understanding, ground yourself and anchor yourself in some sort of professional identity by stating your job title, your function, companies, something that gives an idea of who you are. Then you're going to answer this question in your narrative. What do I do well? How have I contributed in the past? You'll pull directly from your strengths audit there. And then what's important to me next, or what am I targeting next, depending on your goals. This you may put in some threads from your required desire audits. So I highly suggest you go back and watch my Navigating Your Career at Any Age and Stage webinar. It's actually what I did at last year's alumni reunion. It's the 2020 version for more details. And I actually share quite a few career narratives there as well. So that's one and done. And now we can get to the heart of the meeting, which is having a great discussion. So your discussion is going to consist of 5 questions, 3 that you create, 2 that are always the same. Now, in order to create these 3 questions, you need to do your homework. In advance of every meeting, you should be looking at, general and publicly available information on that contact's company. You should, of course, be up to speed on the markets, the business climate, local, regional, whatever, news, politics, things like that. You should also be doing research on the person. Read their LinkedIn, look at their bio on the company website. And as you start reading about that person, if you find yourself getting curious or having some questions, then that's going to maybe be some fodder for one of the questions that you'll create. You should then formulate 3 questions, okay? They're all going to be relevant to the person that you're meeting with. And the questions you prepare will be about the person's background, the company they work for, or maybe questions around their industry and function. You don't ever want to ask a question where you can easily find the answer to online. I don't know if any of you have ever done networking meetings and the person just says, can you tell me about your career path, right? That's annoying. You're not going to gain any allies if you ask a question like that. Now, this question should be written in 2 parts, an observation and a question. So let me give you an example. I was reading your LinkedIn profile and saw that you did commercial business operations in consumer goods before transitioning to pharmaceuticals. That's an observation. As I look at a similar transition, are there any insights you could share from pivoting industries? That's your question. Or here's another one. I noticed we both hold a PMI Agile certification. That's the observation. I feel that interest in Agile is waning. What are your thoughts on that? That's your question. So I love this formula because the observation gives the listener a heads up to where you're going and it shows you've done your research. And then the question asks them for their opinion or expertise or thoughts. So you're engaging in a great discussion. Now, the 4th question you ask accomplishes that purpose of getting referrals. Now, remember what I said, the more people that know you, the more people that you meet with, the more you're inserting yourself into that invisible the invisible network, invisible market. So this can be worded simply. I only have a couple more questions. I wanted to ask, is there anyone else you'd recommend I reach out to given my background and objectives? So that's a really open-ended way. You could also get specific. Is there anyone on the product management team here who might be useful for me to connect with? Or you could say something like, I know you used to work at Apple. Is there anyone there who you'd be willing to connect me with? Now, how you ask is important. So if you phrase this directly but courteously, you should hopefully yield some results. Remember that, again, people are going to be, your ability to insert yourself into this hidden job market is going to rely on this question. And the last question is, how can I be helpful to you? And you're going to ask it just like that. This question is so powerful because it shifts the nature of the conversation. And so many people neglect to do this in their networking, but showing that extra consideration can really pay off for you. Now, if you're not sure what you can actually offer, maybe the research you did ahead of the meeting or the conversation you just had can prompt you to think of some things that you can offer. Or you could just get creative. Maybe they expressed an interest in getting to know an MIT Sloan professor or something. You could say, oh, I noticed that you said you admired Andrew Lo. It's been a few years since I did my thesis, but I'd be happy to make that intro. Or maybe your company is putting on a virtual, conference, or something that you volunteer with is doing an event. Maybe you could offer tickets there. Or maybe you just think about an article, a business book, a podcast. Those are all safe things just to offer an appreciation or to send them after the fact, just to show that you want to reciprocate. Really important. All right. So those are the 5 questions and that, how can I help you? sorry, I've got to deal with all my little bullets here. The how can I help you, of course, allows you to make allies, right? And I've already told you all the ways an ally can help you in your career exploration or research. All right, now you're going to be landing the plane, and 20 minutes will likely be a really short time, and the person is not expecting for you to end so soon, but it's really important that you honor the time frame you laid out and that you close promptly. And so you can just say, I'm going to let you get back to your day. Thank you so much again for your time. I'm really grateful. Now, once you make it clear the end is near, you do want to take a moment to review and confirm any action items with the person that you're meeting with. So for example, if they agree to make a referral, then you could let them know that you'd be happy to send, some information they could easily cut and paste or forward. If you've offered to do something for them, you'll let them know when to expect that. You want to, of course, express gratitude again, because when your contacts feel appreciated, this can pay off for you. And then you're going to promptly wrap it up. No need for a long drawn out goodbye. You just keep it crisp and on point. All right. Now, once the meeting is over, then comes that follow-up. Within 24 hours, you should email the person that you just met and express, thanks. And you should also email the person, if applicable, who referred you to that contact. This is really important. Remember, you're creating relationships as you network. If someone does a favor for you, they're going to appreciate knowing that you were able to follow up and they would like to know how the meeting went. It keeps that relational component front and center. It's ongoing. You're maintaining that relationship. You're, of course, going to add notes to your contact tracker, your activity log. You have to make sure to do that and make sure that you know when to follow up with them again. You do need to have some sort of plan for ongoing follow-up with people that you meet with, because if you lose connection, you won't stay top of mind. You'll want to touch base with your contacts every so often. So while things are fresh in your mind, get those notes down and get that next meeting down so you can always stay organized. All right, so hopefully you now have some new energy and enthusiasm about what networking could be and what it might look like for you. I'm going to just give you a short timeline. Now we're going to turn to how you might think about this if you're following the intelligent networking roadmap within the confines of doing a job search. So here's what to expect. I have seen, using the process we've outlined, it take an average of 6 months from when you start organizing those connections to when you land the plane at a new job for this to happen. Just to get a little more granular, here's some other timeframes I'm seeing. The more higher up, the more senior you go, the longer it can take. Now, to do this, you're going to want to aim to have at least 2 to 4 meetings each week. And after pulling all the alums who've been using my intelligent networking roadmap, I am finding a 3-to-1 ratio, meaning you need to have at least 3 requests for meetings to 3 different people in order to get 1 meeting. Now, this ratio will not be as much when you're starting with your first degree connections. Those that you know and trust, it should not be that high. It could be 2-to-1. But the further out you go, the more legwork you have to do, right? So I give you that 3-to-1 ratio because I want you to have realistic expectations, and I also don't want you to take it personally. This is just how things go. Life is busy. And as I mentioned, you'll do the initial outreach and ask, you'll follow up twice, and then just let it go. Let it go, let it go. All right. Then you want to aim to touch base with your connections no more than every 6 weeks or so after you met with them. And in doing this, you're just going to give them a quick update on your search. So it's a way for you to stay top of mind. All right. If you have a reason to reach out before 6 weeks, fine, do it. But touch base at least 6 weeks, just saying, hi, wanted to let you know I'm still researching. I've had some conversations with, these companies, nothing yet. I'd appreciate you keeping me top of mind if you hear of anything that's coming down the pipe. So the final step on that 6-step intelligent networking roadmap is staying engaged. So let's say that you have done this with great success and you've landed. So that's awesome. Now what you want to do is let every person in your network, that original network and the expanded network, know where you landed. Okay. Make sure to give them the update and thank them for their time or their help if applicable. And then of course, offer to be of help to them if they're ever in that same stage themselves. You'll also want to think about little goodies that you could share as appropriate. So if you read an article, or if you hear a podcast, or if you learn some information and you think so-and-so would appreciate this, great excuse to reach out. That's a way to keep kind of feelers out on your network and staying engaged as appropriate. Another good excuse to reach out is the holidays, the end of the year, December, typically a slower time of year. That might be a nice time for you to kind of look at your network, curate it, clean it up, send out some emails, just checking in with people and asking how the year went. LinkedIn often does a reminder on work anniversaries, or they'll do something like, they used to do birthdays, they don't anymore because of privacy concerns, but oftentimes you may get a, you've been connected to this person for 4 years. So that's a nice top of mind, just to maybe shoot them a personal note. Hey, how are you doing? Was thinking about you. And then of course, the ongoing intentional maintaining of your network. Hopefully you are embracing this idea of networking being ongoing and relational and reciprocal. I will tell you that the alums I have worked with who've used this have told me it has enabled them to have stronger impressions, to have better meetings, to get more referrals, and to just form better relationships in general. I skipped over. I do have a little testimonial quote, but I'm looking at the time and I see that there might be some questions coming in. So I will let you read this on the slide deck. This is just a testimonial from a Sloanie who's used this throughout the year to great success. And then just to wrap it up, guys, as we kind of do the takeaways, here's what I hope you land with, or hope you remember. You've got to think about networking, not just when you're in transition. It's essential to lifelong career management. Think about those networking meeting goals. I try to get a fun acronym here. Think about it as simple as AIR. You are looking at advice, information, and referrals. Effective networking conversations have a beginning, they have a middle, and an end. So remember, you ask for the meeting, you need to manage it. When you do that well, you will get allies and champions who can help you for the rest of your career. And then finally, being gracious, being generous, builds a relationship and builds meaningful connections. And I would say after this year, one thing this world needs more of is more meaningful connections. So that is intelligent networking. I hope you take these principles. I hope you begin to put them into practice. I hope you begin to make them a regular habit. And I think you'll find that if you do, you'll reap the benefits for the rest of your career. So I hope you have a great rest of Alumni Reunion. It's been great to talk with you. I'm going to look at these questions. I believe just wondered, oh, thanks, Greg. How much time do I have?
Yeah, we have just about 10 minutes. So we can turn to a few questions. Okay. While those come in, I do want to highlight for our viewers that they can access the handouts that Bryn mentioned via the Reunion Virtual Attendee Hub. And her previous webinars are also available on the MIT Sloan Career Development site, as well as the MIT Sloan Alumni YouTube channel. So a lot of great information there. I think one of the questions that came in refers to the beginning of your presentation when you're talking about reviewing your first and second degree connections and creating your content tracker. Do you recommend doing this work in LinkedIn from an anonymous perspective? And then I might add on to that, well, do you recommend LinkedIn Premium?
Okay, so part one to the question, do I recommend you use the anonymous so no one can see if you're viewing them? We actually have a Sloanie who got a job just by looking at someone's LinkedIn, and then he saw that she looked at his LinkedIn and he offered her a job. So here's what I do recommend. You need to do the groundwork I suggested in my navigating webinar, and then you need to use that to create a optimized LinkedIn profile. There is a LinkedIn webinar as well, guys, LinkedIn 2020. And I say, if your LinkedIn is optimized and you are actually putting some energy behind networking and expanding your network, go ahead and show them your name, show them your affiliation, own it, and you never know what can happen. If it's like creepy stalkerish and you're looking at exes, then no. But if we're doing this with the intention of being purposeful about networking, you have nothing to lose. I say go for it. LinkedIn Premium. So the default answer is you can get free LinkedIn Premium for 30 days. And so I do recommend you look at that and see if it's worth it. It can be worth it for a few reasons, but again, only after you've optimized your profile and you're feeling good about it. The advantages of having LinkedIn Premium are that you can look at an unlimited amount of people's profiles. When you have the free tool, as some of you may know, if you're someone who's browsing a lot of profiles, at some point during the month, you hit a limit. They'll say you hit your commercial use limit, come back next month and you can look at other people. So if you are in active job search mode and looking at other people's profiles, which is really important for career mapping and networking, then you might want to do LinkedIn Premium for that free month and then extend it. Other than that, the other benefits that kind of drop off, it's around having some more search filters on a job board, for example, or having more search filters just in general on other parts of the site. So I have LinkedIn Premium, but I also use it all the time in my work in coaching. I'd say do the 30-day package and then decide. Does that help?
Yes, thank you. Appreciate it. So one question that came in is, quote, as an experienced leader, I have always found the question, what do you do? A challenge, as I've been successful in a variety of roles, whether sales, strategy, across various industries. So what can you advise around that type of introduction or question?
Mm-hmm. So I love this, and this is why it is so important to do that groundwork I mentioned first, where you're actually thinking about 3 different things. Remember when I gave the overview for how you do your 1-minute introduction for a networking meeting? You answer 3 questions. Who are you? What do you do well? Because it's not just about what you do, it's about what you do well. And what's important to you next and why, or what are your targets? That's where you pull from those 2 different audits. So I think there's 2 different parts that you want to think about is first of all, who are you professionally? I'm an executive coach and career strategist, let's say, or you're a product manager, or you are an engineer by training that now leads supply chain development. So that's the who are you. And that is actually the most important part of that introduction, because everything you say after that, everything is going to have that context with it. The what you do is actually something you need to be consciously choosing, because we all have a variety of skill sets and strengths, but you need to decide what are the talents that I do well, not just what I do, because we're not getting a litany, we're synthesizing information into short, concise statements. So this is why doing that strengths audit, and if you haven't seen my navigating webinar, there's a bunch of questions you're going to answer. It's going to help you filter out your list of strengths. And then I recommend you go through it, cross out the stuff you don't want to do anymore. Think about what are the strengths I want to be leading with moving forward. And that's how you answer, what do you do well? Don't ever answer, what do I do? Answer, or you turn it around. Here's where my areas of expertise are, X, Y, and Z. I hope that helps. I'm happy to chat with you one-on-one to further.
Thank you so much. One more question before we wrap up. LinkedIn provides a picture frame now that indicates that you're open for work or looking for opportunities. What is your perspective on that?
So first of all, I think that LinkedIn is your professional networking branding site, right? And everything that is on it needs to feel good and right for you. It needs to feel authentic. It needs to feel genuine. So if you are inclined to put that up, then by all means do it. My personal thought is that I don't love it. I think that your LinkedIn can do enough work, and that you want that calling it out. Again, this is so personal too, so I hate to just make a blanket statement, but I guess I would recommend you not do it. And it's not because I don't think it's useful, because people who are using LinkedIn to hire and source talent are looking at who's got an open for work, because that tells them just-in-time hires. It tells them people that are ready to go work. But I do feel like it just adds a little tinge of perhaps desperation that I don't love. It's hard to say though. If you feel like you want to do it, do it. I don't want to crush anybody's ideas about what feels right to them.
Great. Well, thank you, Bryn. We'll go ahead and close here, but we do want to
Okay.
thank you so much again for this fantastic framework that you've provided. Again, clear and concise, actionable steps that our alumni can take to start reframing how they think about networking. So thank you. We'd love to thank all of our attendees for joining us today. We have a lot more programming ahead, so please explore the reunion schedule on the virtual attendee hub. And enjoy the rest of your reunion. Thank you again, Bryn.
Fun. Bye, guys. Thank you so much for joining us.